welcome to my channel. My name is Martine, and if you are new here, I do videos on Vedic astrology mainly, but also with some tropical insights. And I focus on both relationship and natal astrology. And if you like this video and you would like to see more content from me, please like the video, subscribe to my channel, and click on the notifications bell if you want to see when I will post a new video. And also, please comment in the comment section with anything you would care to share. And also, if you're interested in a private reading, I do private readings in astrology. I also do tarot readings, by the way. But in astrology, I do readings on a wide variety of topics. And you can email me for a full list of options and pricing list. I will leave my email in the video description. And I also have a tarot channel like I kind of suggested, and I will be linking it in the video description as well as in the pinned comment. And if you're interested in tarot, you can go ahead and check it out. Maybe subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. And just another final mention, I have also recently started a members only section on my astrology channel, and I will be posting 4 extra videos per month, 2 for one level and 2 for the second level. So if you are a member to the second level, which is called Multiverse Surfer, you have access to all 4 videos per month. And if you are in the Galaxy Explorer subscription phase, you will have access to 2 of these videos per month. And I have given more details about the kind of videos I'm going to be posting in a short video where I talked about my membership options, and I will be linking that in the video description as well. If you want to check it out, go ahead and check out the video description. Thank you. So today's topic is going to be on something that I wanted to talk about again for a long time, but I never got around to it. And I recently just this topic came, again, rumbling in my mind. Like I kept being triggered by things in my environment, videos that were recommended in my YouTube feed on topics about gender and, like chauvinism and stuff like that. And I felt like, okay, finally, I want to talk about this topic. And this is, again, my opinion based on astrological readings as well. So based on things that I've noticed from astrology. And again, I will be linking some related videos in the video description. I did one video before where I talked about my views on gender and how astrology has given me valuable insights in that respect with respect to gender and how I view it. And then I've also did a video on hypergamy, and yeah, I think that's pretty much it with respect to topics related to gender and gender issues and stuff. And today I wanted to talk about the topic of chauvinism and the types of chauvinists that I have noticed based on astrology. And it is really quite linked to a lot of the things that I have said in the video where I talked about my views on gender. And I will be linking that in the video description again if you want to see it. But just very briefly, what I talked about there is, among other things, the fact that astrology it shows your spiritual nature. It shows your soul, if you want to call it like that, your spirit. And this spiritual nature doesn't really have anything to do with the animal side, right? So my basic views are that we have animal instincts and we have gender-based differences that come from the animal side of us or the biological side of us. But that side has nothing to do with your spiritual side. This is why, if you take, let's say, 2 people who both of them have, let's say, sun in Purva Bhadrapada, and one of them is a man and the other one is a woman, they will both have actually very similar energies on an energetic plane. They will aim for the same things in life. They will have, a lot of similar interests as well. Of course, depends on what else is happening in the horoscope. But let's presume that a man and a woman have exactly the same astrological placements. But if a woman has Purva Bhadrapada placements, she will not be as able in society to reach her fulfillment, reach her spiritual potential because of social norms connected to her gender, right? So the same qualities that will make a Purva Bhadrapada man be praised in society will make a Purva Bhadrapada woman get shunned in society, for instance, or make it so that she has to pretend to be something she isn't in order to achieve what she wants. to give you an example. And by the same token, now the reason I use Purva Bhadrapada, I also did a video about Purva Bhadrapada more in detail when I talked about Jupiter's nakshatras. Again, if you're interested, I will be linking that in the video description maybe as well. But I use Purva Bhadrapada as an example because it is known to be the nakshatra that has the most masculine energy. And even this, as I said in this other video on gender, even this classification in Vedic astrology that speaks of masculine nakshatras and feminine nakshatras, these are human classifications. On an energetic plane, there is no such thing as masculine and feminine. I mean, these things, when they get trickled down into our human existence, into human society, they get labeled as either feminine or masculine traits based on our perception and our social norms. And let's not forget that most of Vedic astrology, right, it comes from, actually all of it comes from India, which for a long time, right, and even now is quite strict when it comes to gender roles, right? So this is why you see ancient texts, for instance, that say, oh, Purva Bhadrapada women are not good wives, you know, or Kritika women, same things. You know, these women who, these nakshatras that are more masculine, seen as more masculine in traits and qualities, they're deemed to be not good women, not good wives, not, you know, like basically stay away from them. And by the same token, you know, you have men who are seen as more feminine, although I would say in most places of the world, men who have more feminine energy throughout history have had it easier than women who have had masculine energy in terms of fulfilling their destiny and finding their place in the world. Because, you know, men who are more feminine in nature can find work in arts and they are accepted and they're allowed to be themselves, right? Whereas a woman who, let's say, wants to govern a country or like wants to run a corporation, she will still face a lot more criticisms than the man. So, but what I was trying to say is that even if a man, let's say if you take two people, a man and a woman, and the woman is a moon in Rohini, which is one of the most feminine nakshatras. It's a nakshatra that is very artistic, that loves to be admired for their beauty and their talent and all this stuff. And you take a man with moon in Rohini, still in a lot of places of the world, especially the more gender, you know, how should I put it, conservative, especially the more conservative they are with respect, the more rigid they are with respect to gender-based roles, they will frown upon a man who, you know, wants to be like a dancer or a ballet dancer or an artist and wants to receive praise for their talent and their beauty, as opposed to receiving praise for more traditionally masculine, quote unquote, qualities like, I don't know, achievement and conquering and hard work and, I don't know, doing push-ups and stuff like that, right? So this is just briefly the relevant part that I wanted to discuss with respect to this topic. So looking at different charts over the years and having in view the social pressures that are different for men versus women in society, I've noticed two main categories of chauvinists, and I think the most obvious, and I think what most people tend to think, is that the most chauvinist men are the ones who are the most masculine, right? So they think, you know, guys who are super butch, who are, you know, the big, tough, burly, you know, I don't know, spend their time doing martial arts and kickboxing, that those are going to be the most chauvinistic men in the world, because to a large extent, these kinds of men who, let's say a man who has very masculine energy and is raised among men, will have very little understanding of a woman's biology and a woman's different needs and different energy and all this stuff, which is definitely there. You know, there are biological differences between men and women. So women will have different needs biologically in relationships. I also mentioned this in that video on gender, that at least in my view, these different needs are especially relevant in romantic relationships. They're not really very relevant in other places, in other areas of life. Like, this is why you can have women who might be very successful in making their own money, maybe even running a business, but they still want to have security in a relationship, because that is a basic biological need, right? So women are wired to seek men who will provide them with security, financially, physically, emotionally, you know, make them feel like they have a backup that they can fall back on in case of an emergency. That's like a biological need of women. That's because women carry the child, and that's a state of huge vulnerability and a state of huge vulnerability, and they need someone to rely on and in case of emergency, and also because women on average are physically weaker, even if let's say pregnancy is out of the question, right? So these are different biological needs. So the men who are masculine in energy may not understand women, right? So, and these kinds of men definitely can also become chauvinists. And these are usually the ones who are, open, like overt, chauvinists, like men who will not shy away from speaking their mind. They'll say things like, nasty things about women, like why do women need to work, and what are women doing in the workforce, and like stuff like that. Because generally these kinds of men will just see women as, they don't respect women because they see them as physically weaker, or or just because they don't understand, why women function differently and how they function and all this stuff. And not that I'm saying that ignorance is an excuse, but I'm just telling the way things are in most places in the world, is that, a lot of men still, because they were raised with the mentality that women have to adjust to them, make no effort to understand women. This is why most men are complaining about how difficult it is to find a girlfriend. It's not because women are so difficult, it's because they don't make any effort to understand what a woman needs. So this is a parenthesis. Yeah, so this is these types of men. So these are the kinds of men that if you look at their horoscopes, you will see a lot of masculine energy, right? So let's say, again, you might see a lot of planets in Purva Bhadrapada, Vishaka, even, let me think, Chitra. It depends, So again, I'm not saying that all men who have masculine energy are chauvinistic. It depends on certain placements as well. So especially what I've seen is, let's say men who have Mars in the first house, Mars conjunct Pluto, and they don't have other considerable feminine energy in their horoscope. Because, like, for instance, a man could have a strong Mars energy, but if they have to some extent, also some Venus, some moon energy there, they will have some basic intuitive understanding of feminine energy and how women function, right? But men who generally have like a predominance of masculine energy will have a very hard time understanding women, and they will be very much, caught up in male societies and male hierarchies, and they will basically just see women as like, something that is meant to make their lives easier and make them look good in front of other men, right? So they don't really care about women and their personality. So this is like basically the Andrew Tate level of chauvinism, right? On the other hand, though, there is a more subtle form of chauvinism, and this is counterintuitive. You may not realize this, but men who have feminine energies, I would say, in my experience, are the worst chauvinists. And let me break down what I mean by feminine energies. I'm talking about men who, let's say, what I have noticed time and again are men who have moon conjunct Venus, for instance, or moon opposite Venus, or actually even the smaller aspects in tropical astrology between Venus and moon, like the trine and the sextile, or the square. I've seen these to bring a lot of chauvinistic mentalities. And it's really counterintuitive, you may think, because these men are actually very good at understanding women, and that's where it all starts. That is the reason why they also hate women, if you know what I mean. It's like they have a very good understanding, and they can be very manipulative, just like women. They can be very manipulative in relationships, and they can also be extremely selfish. I have talked about Moon Venus, again, conjunction in the natal chart, and aspects, actually even interaspects between Moon and Venus in the natal chart, and how it links to potential problems in romantic relationships, because these people, especially with the conjunction and the opposition, can be very self-absorbed to the point where they don't even recognize that there's another person in the relationship. And in the man's chart, it takes on a different aspect, which is that the moon is also the mother archetype. So oftentimes when you see moon conjunct Venus in a man's horoscope, these men are kind of seeking to have a motherly kind of love from their wives. And they're expecting their wives to tolerate infinite crap, right? So that they can feel loved in a relationship. This is oftentimes how it plays out with most men, because most men are unconscious and they don't make the effort to understand themselves either through astrology or psychology or any other medium of self-study, right? They generally, a man who's unconscious is just going to play out his chart with all the worst and the best natural tendencies of those particular configurations. So, and again, Moon and Venus are the most feminine energies. And I've seen this time and again where men who have Moon Venus, or they have a Moon in the first house, Venus in the first house, these men are actually low-key chauvinistic, or men who have a lot of planets in the moon-ruled nakshatras or the Venus-ruled nakshatras. Like I said, Rohini especially, I've seen this a lot, but also like Purva Falguni and Purva Shadha. And the reason why these men are more chauvinistic is because they're actually secretly jealous of women. They kind of like, to some extent, would like to be like women. And it's not like because they're gay necessarily. These could be straight men, right, on a biological level. But they actually envy women because they, have you ever heard these like men who say things like, what do women have to complain about? I would love to have a guy to take care of me while I stay at home and, take care of the house and kids, right? Have you ever heard these men who say that? That's because a lot of the times these men have a lot of feminine energy in their horoscope. And in reality, they're actually quite resentful that they're expected to go out and work and be a provider, quote unquote, because that's not really what they would like to do if you look at their horoscope, right? Especially people who have a lot of Venus energy. I mean, with the moon as well, to some extent, the moon is very sensitive, right? This is why the moon rules the fourth house, which is the home base. The moon is very sensitive, so it's not happy being, constantly out there fighting to get stuff done and to, bring home the bacon and all this stuff. It would like to have a comfortable home and just stay and be nurturing. And also moon is connected to motherhood, so it would like to maybe take care of kids or nurture others and all this stuff. Venus is, again, the lover archetype. It's the courtesan archetype, the artist, right? So Venus is all about sugar, spice, and everything nice. And I'm actually going to talk about this more in a separate video because it's counterintuitive, but people, and especially women who have very strong Venus energy, are very unlikely to be maternal. And you would think that, this is not the intuitive way, but actually a woman who has, let's say, Mars energy is more likely to want to have kids than a Venus dominant woman, because Venus is all about sugar, spice, and everything nice. Venus is about leisure, right? So Venus is not about taking care of babies, because taking care of babies, that's something that can ruin your beauty and your, you're not going to be able to do your beauty sleep if you have a baby, right? You're going to have to deal with a lot of messy stuff, like you have to clean up barf and stuff, right? So that's none of the things that Venus would like to spend time doing. Venus is about beauty and pleasure and art and enjoying things, enjoying life, right? So if you have a very strong Venus, it's unlike, and this is true for both men and women from what I've seen, they generally don't want to have kids because they're constantly thinking about like, if I have a child, I'm going to have to give away all my money, all my comfort is going to go out the window. No. I'm much happier the way that I am. Thank you. I don't want to take care of a child. Whereas a woman who let's say is Mars dominant will see motherhood as a challenge, right? It's like, and since the Mars dominants love a challenge, they're going to be like, yes, I would love to have my children, right? So that I can raise them and teach them about life and go Bear Grylls with them. And, obviously this is an exaggeration, but it's kind of like along those lines. Mars is about, teaching people how to make it to some extent, right? Because it's about survival and life in general and defense and the battle, the struggle and all that. And the struggle stimulates them to go on in life, right? So this is a parenthesis again, but men who have more feminine energies, and by the way, when I say feminine energies, don't think that these are men who are wearing lipstick in public. I've seen, I actually can think about a guy that I know who is like this really tall, tough, martial artist sort of person, and looks on very much like the typical manly man on the surface, and he's one of these guys who would say things like, are you kidding me? I would not mind If I were a woman, I would love for some guy to take care of me, to stay at home and take care of, the home and the environment. And like, just cook and clean while someone else goes and does the dirty work and works for corporate or whatever. And guess what? In this guy's horoscope, a lot of feminine energy, including an aspect between Moon and Venus, right? And to be fair, there are also masculine energies there. But already when you have a man who has like a lot of Moon, a lot of Venus energy, they actually would love to be taken care of. So they secretly resent women. And also in a relationship, they generally don't want to have a traditional male role, in the sense that they don't really feel comfortable with the idea of a woman completely relying on them and expecting things from them, right? Because again, they have that kind of more feminine energy, which shows that they would like to be taken care of, especially if you look at men who have Rohini placements. Rohini likes to be a little princess and likes to be pampered. And they will sometimes, especially because of gender-based pressures, you're not going to hear these men saying this, but they love to be complimented, right? If you look at men who spend a lot of time, taking care of themselves and, I don't know, like rubbing all kinds of like ointments on themselves and wearing perfume and I don't know, all this stuff, it's like a lot of the times these men are men who have strong Venus and or Moon energy in their horoscope. Because, the feminine energy is more about being in their own little universe. And it's also about attracting as opposed to conquering, right? So the feminine energy likes to just sit there and have other people come to them. Which oftentimes actually, even if they play their cards right, they manage to do that very well. There are loads of artists, men artists, who have Venus in the first house, right? Because Venus in the first house can make a person very attractive, so they attract a lot of people to them, both of all genders, right? So what was I going to say? Yes, this is one aspect. So the aspect why some men who have feminine energy are chauvinistic, potentially, is because they low-key envy women. Another, which goes hand in hand, another reason is because a lot of the times these men are bullied themselves. So because especially this is for older generations, I mean, even nowadays, I'm sure that bullying is not a thing of the past, but among boys, oftentimes boys will bully the person who is the most sensitive, the most introverted, right? So which often happens with these men. If you talk about men who have a lot of feminine energy, they're not going to act maybe like traditional, stereotypical boys, right? Like not according to society's expectations. They may rather prefer to read poetry as opposed to playing football. So that automatically throughout their lives makes them more likely to attract, basically bullies and all kinds of forms of abuse. Worst case scenario, even potentially sexual abuse. It's like a thing that, I mean, to be fair, women are definitely more targeted in this aspect than men. But it happens to men as well. And oftentimes when it does, it's usually men who are not the toughest, right? Who are not the most assertive that are the targets, right? Similarly to women. And it's usually the ones who are more sensitive, who are more introverted, that often, unfortunately, are targeted. So a lot of these men grow up with a giant chip on their shoulder, or sometimes they grow up, and I've seen this, again, with people that I know. Like, I know a guy who, with Moon-Venus conjunction, who, in the first house, who is involved in making weapons, so has cultivated this entire macho image. But in reality, if you get to know the person, he's not really that. He's just grown this entire external kind of tough guy image as a response to being repeatedly attacked throughout his life. And so a lot of these men grow up with, like I said, a giant chip on their shoulder because they are treated badly. They're not allowed to be themselves, and they don't really feel appreciated, respected. Like they feel like they are only respected if they put on the buff energy or they try really hard to prove how masculine they are. So in turn, a lot of these men who have, in reality, a lot of these men who have feminine energies actually end up becoming bullies later on in life, even narcissists, because, those same sensitive traits that, made them like poetry when they were younger has now turned into them becoming extremely defensive against the world. And also, if they are bullied for their sensitive qualities, that will make them hate women even more. Because if you read about narcissism, for instance, under one of the main messages behind, why narcissists act the way that they are, why they abuse others, is because they can't stand people who remind them of the same qualities that they have disowned, that they have buried deep down. So since a lot of these men who become narcissistic, they were abused severely by other people, usually other men when they were growing up, because they were seen as weaker. So now they despise any sign of weakness. So because it reminds them of themselves, it reminds them of the parts of themselves that they tried to bury. And so they end up resenting women. I swear to God, I think I've seen like the most violently chauvinistic men that I've come across are men who have feminine energy, who have, like I said, oftentimes I've seen the Moon-Venus conjunction, or I see Moon in the first house or Venus in the first house, and also nakshatras that have a lot of feminine energy, potentially as well. So yeah, because for all of the reasons that I have mentioned. So the two main reasons are because they envy women, and the second one is because they resent women, right? The more they are abused for having feminine qualities, the more they resent women, and they start to downright hate them. Like, how is it, like on some level they're thinking like, how is it possible that women can be everything that I want, but I can't be, right? I can't have a sensitive side. I can't be taken care of. I have to be tough and all this stuff. So they may not articulate it. They may not even be conscious that they are having these feelings and thoughts, but that is the underlying reason why they actually resent women, So this is what I wanted to say. I know, again, a pretty long rant, but it is something that I have noticed for a while now, and I really wanted to talk about it because I think it's really useful, especially for women, to understand this. Because I stress this also, remember that men who have more feminine energy are also very good at making women feel at ease around them. This is why, it's not a surprise to me that, most cases of, for instance, sexual assault happen to women by men that they know. Because, a lot of these men who are capable of something like that, they're very manipulative. And I wouldn't be surprised to see that many of them have, feminine energies in their horoscopes. Because, again, a man who has feminine energy is capable of making a woman feel safe because he will know what makes a woman tick and how she functions, right? But whether he uses this knowledge for good or for bad, that's another issue, right? Because, when they use it for good, it could turn into, these men can become healers, psychotherapists, whatever. But if they use it for bad, they can become narcissists, psychopaths, and so on. And I think, yeah, like I said, I think this is really useful for women to take into account in general when they are, even when they're dating. When they're dating a guy, get his horoscope, look at his horoscope, and look for whether he has a lot of feminine energy. Maybe, keep an eye open for potential manipulation. Ask yourselves if there are motives behind his actions, that you may not have considered. All right, so this is pretty much what I wanted to say, and I hope that you have liked this topic. And if you have, don't forget to like and subscribe and click on the notifications bell to see when I will post a new video. And also, please comment in the comment section with anything you want to share about this topic or others. And also, if you're interested in a private astrology reading, also tarot, you can email me at the email address in the video description. I can send you a full list of options with prices. And also, last but not least, I have a tarot channel. And if you are curious about tarot, you can check it out. I will leave the link in the video description as well as in the pinned comment. And yes, maybe subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. So thank you very much for listening.